creators, welcome back to the club. The Black Creators Club is the go-to resource for Black movers and shakers in Hollywood, the latest pop culture, and the journeys of media mavens such as ourselves. I'm your host, Tequila Friend, and I'm joined by my co-host, Evan A. Chapman.
Hello.
And a very special guest for today. Hey, Evan A. Allison Davis. Allison Davis, welcome to the club.
Thank you.
Yes. So we just wanted to welcome Allison to the club. She is a creative producer and writer. She has created and collabed on projects like on Hulu, Amazon Studios, Google, PBS, NPR, amongst others. And the most recent project, or one of the most recent projects she worked on, was with OWN, which is how I met her. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but that's exactly how I connected with Allison. So good to connect with you and see you again. So first, I just wanted to check in on with you. Like, how are you doing in this like crazy state of the world right now?
I'm actually, thank you for asking, and thank you for having me. I'm okay. I'm actually okay. Thankfully, as you mentioned, I am still writing, just wrapped the room for David Makes Man. And so I feel really fortunate not only to have been working, but also that team is so great and we have so much love for each other, and it was in season 2. So just even being able to, we had check-ins on Zoom, and being able to have this group of people to check in with literally every day and like see familiar faces, not only during the pandemic, but during the protests, just have like someone to check in with and talk to and bounce off of was really a blessing and really helped me keep my sanity.
I think
it literally makes such a difference. Mm-hmm.
Such a difference when you have like great people around you. And that's why I'm so excited to even have the show and be able to do this with Tequila. She has great energy. So great energy always makes for, just the best work environment.
Yeah, 100%.
That's so true. So true. So, as Ebony said, we're going to get into some questions with you. We want to learn all about your journey, all about your career, all about what you're up to. I think it's so awesome to see like a Black female writer just doing the damn thing, and producer. And so we just want to get into all of that. We're going to, just for our listeners and our viewers, we're going to do a quick game afterwards with Allison. So stick around for that and just hear more about what she's up to. So I think the first thing we all want to know is, when did you first realize you wanted to be a writer?
Oh, I was 4. No, it's like my whole life, My mom taught me how to read when I was 3. And instead of reading to me as a child, she would make me read to her. So I became like very advanced very quickly. And so by the time, like as soon as I could write, I was writing stories and making up. I have like little books that I put together when I was like 5 or 6. So that was never a question.
So I love, that's honestly the best way to teach a kid, right? Like get them early.
I think so.
And then start having them like do those things so that they're getting used to it instead of, relying on you to read them the story. And then you probably, if I was the mom, I'd probably be going to sleep. I'd be like, oh, thank you for my little bedtime story.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think it's so great too because you don't hear it as often that someone just knew what they wanted to do or at least knew this interest and stuck with it from such a young age. I feel like most folks are trying different things, figuring it out, going to college and having 10 different majors before they figure out this is what I want to land on. So It's awesome that you're like, you listen, I read, I wrote, and this is what I do.
I didn't know how it was going to happen, but I always knew that I would be a storyteller. I'm really fortunate in the fact that my father is an artist. And so from a very young age, we were always encouraged to create. And my parents told me that I could do whatever I wanted, and I believed them.
Yeah, and I think that's important, right? To have that support system. What would you say is the most interesting thing about writing, or like the writing process?
The most interesting thing about writing is that everything's interesting.
I love that.
Like even when something bad happens, like even when you go out with your friends and it turns out to be a horrible night, you're like, well, I can use this. Like you can find something that everything is funny or can be relatable or it all comes in and then it all comes out once you're in front of the page. And
Oh, I was just gonna add, would you say that a lot of like personal experiences contribute to the things that you write about?
For sure. Yeah, and not just like physical experiences, things that actually happen, but you know, emotional experiences, which I think is even more important when people say write what you know. What I sort of internalize and interpret that to mean is write what you understand. And that's why so many of the best stories are specific, because they express universal emotions, right? I always use the example of Moonlight, for example. I might not know what it's like to be, you know, a young boy in Miami and the projects struggling with my sexuality, but I know what it's like to feel ostracized for someone that I love or something I believe in. I know what it's like to feel like I don't belong anywhere. I know what it's like to have my heart broken. And that is why that movie touches so many people, even though they don't share those specific experiences. So, I mean, the most wonderful thing about writing, I think, is being able to express those truths and connect with people on that base level, you know, and really have conversations with hundreds, thousands of people at a time just through your own experiences, because you know that it's a human experience.
Yes.
That's incredible.
That's awesome.
I mean, just to even think that, like, you know, what you're writing, what you're creating, how you're feeling, obviously there's so many other people that also identify with exactly how you feel, or can at least piece together bits and pieces of your creativity and to like internalize that for themselves. And I think that's what makes such great, you know, pieces to watch, to identify with, like the things that I'm at home crying, you know, to like movies and TV shows, because it's like what I identify with, or I can at least sympathize or empathize with whatever the character's going through. And so I feel like that to me is like the indication of like such a good writer, because you're like, oh, like I get it, I feel it, I understand it, you know.
Well, understand
Absolutely.
and know that the person writing it was probably crying when they were writing it too.
Yeah.
But that's kind of my other question too. Is like, it sounds like from what you're saying, or another theme that I'm picking up on, is writers have to be so incredibly self-aware and just at least have some sort of in tune with their emotions. Do you feel like that was a process for you to even get that way, or were you always in a sense in tune with not only your emotions but how you're perceived, how others perceive things? Because I'm interested to see how can, if you write something, how is it then a universal theme unless you truly know this is the core and this is the feeling that I'm trying to get out there?
Yeah. I mean, it's like any other human journey. I don't think I'm any more self-aware than anyone else is, or any writer is necessarily. We may spend more time pondering these things. There's a quote that I love that says, creating art is healing your wounds at the same time that you're exposing them, you know, over and over. You're constantly ripping off these scabs and healing it and ripping it off. But that's also why, you know, writing, it's not, as far as the arts go, and even entertainment goes, it's not necessarily a young person's medium as much, you know, because you don't really have as much to say when you're 21, haven't that much. There's a reason, you know, Toni Morrison published her first novel, I want to say at 39, and she's Toni Morrison.
Right.
The goddess. Every time I read her, I'm like, God,
love her.
but people mature into, like, the people that we uphold the most in literature and theater and, you know, the written arts are usually the people later on in their life when they actually have something to say. They've been around places, and you know, there's a million things that when I was 21, I had a lot of conviction about, that I was like, I will never do this, and I can't believe this. And, you know, it's not till you get into these situations that you understand that there are a lot more nuances and context and gray areas. And once you understand that, then you can write compelling characters, because you can write a character that's experiencing that struggle as well.
Yeah, very complex. Love that.
Can you talk about your process to nabbing some of the positions that you've had in the industry, or roles that you've played, and stories that you've helped write?
Well, it's sort of it's just a long process. It's a very sort of long story and circuitous process. I will say, you know, obviously, I'm sure everyone that you ask this question will tell you what worked for them. doesn't work for everybody. And
Right.
my process has been very much doing what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it, and then each step sort of leading to the next step in a way that I've only been able to see now, looking backwards. It was not, you know, I'm going to do this and then I'm going to, like, it wasn't something that was mapped out and lined up. And, you know, I started entry level and then worked my way up to a place in it anyway. And some people do, and that works for them. But I very much, you know, I started my career in LA, and then sort of left it, got heartbroken. I had written a treatment for a show that sold, but the person I was working for didn't give me credit for it. And I was really heartbroken and left and was like, if this is LA, I don't want it. If this is Hollywood, I don't want it. I was very young when we sold the show, like 22 or something.
Wow.
And I was like, I don't need this, you know. I wanted to be a storyteller. I didn't know, I did want to be a writer. I wanted to be a creative showrunner as soon as I knew that was a position that could be had, but I didn't need it, you know. So I went back east, I went to New York and was writing for magazines and producing like plays and music videos for my friends and stuff. A lot of front of the book stuff for like The Fader and New York Magazine and Time Out. And then I applied for a job that I thought was in New York, but it turned out to be for an ad agency in San Francisco. And I didn't get the job I applied for, but they saw that I was a producer and they're like, oh, we're actually looking for a producer. So I went out to San Francisco for an ad agency called Butler, Shine and Stern, and produced a campaign for Converse. That was the first user-generated campaign, which was a big deal at the time.
Yeah.
This was like pre-YouTube. Like, I literally remember somebody sending me the link for YouTube, and I was like, this will never last. So that was a huge campaign for Converse. We won a bunch of awards, and I stayed out there for a minute. And then I was a writer and producer for Current TV, which was Al Gore's network. And got laid off in 2008 with everyone else. Remembered I wanted to be a screenwriter, wrote a script that got me a little bit of love down here. Applied to a bunch of schools with it, got into all of them, couldn't afford any of them. So I didn't go, and I stuck around San Francisco. And then I started working at ITBS, which is a funder and producer for like high-end documentaries for PBS, POV, and Independent Lens. And I was a production manager there, which was amazing. I got to work with like Alex Gibney and Laura Poitras and really great documentary filmmakers. And then New York, NYU came back around and asked if I wanted to come back to study there. And long story short, I was awarded a departmental fellowship, which means I got a full ride to study at Tisch. And I went in, I'm almost done. I went in television, midway through switched to theater because I really wanted to study with Susan Laurie Parks, who was the visiting professor at the time, and also really learn the foundation of storytelling. That was a little bit more than just like sort of A story, B story, C story. Came out of there, got a fellowship at This American Life, where I learned how to make radio and cut tape, produced this really great with them, produced for Core on NPR, had my first play produced, became the artistic director of Mokata in Brooklyn, the Museum of African Contemporary Diasporan Arts. Then I did this project, I got pulled from there to do this project with Google, with EJI and Brian Stevenson, called Lynching in America, where I basically traveled around a minivan around the South for 4 months, interviewing descendants of lynching victims and creating little narratives, like mini podcasts, and directed a short film about a family who we brought to Shreveport, Louisiana, which was the site of their patriarch's lynching, you know, a few decades ago for the first time. And then I went to work on the Underground Railroad with Barry Jenkins, and that was my first job in writing for television. And that was in 2017. And here I am, and I'm on my fifth season of writing for television.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, the
What
thing
a
is,
journey. And
no,
we just have to take it all in.
right. Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, like, you never know what, your journey is going to be. And
Never
everyone's
know.
journey is always so different. I want to talk about that, like, Google project that you did.
Sure.
Yeah. So the reason why I got into journalism was because of the different people you get to meet, the different stories you get to tell, you get to hear all these different things, right? As a writer, do you feel like that is a draw for you? Like, I mean, who knew that you were going to be doing, a lynching project with Google and, like, ad campaigns and whatever else. And so it kind of, like, you get an adventure, and, like, I think for me, like, that was journalism for me. It's like, it's an adventure. You never know what you're going to get. And you get to hear all these have different experiences. So did you also feel that way as a writer, like, working on that project? I mean, can you, like, tell us a little bit about, like, what you learned or, anything like that?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's a total adventure and it's amazing. I mean, this is something that I get to do. And, telling other people's stories, being entrusted with other people's stories is such an honor,
Mm-hmm.
and as much as possible, letting them tell their own stories in any way I can provide a platform for that or be a conduit for that, especially in the doc world. I can. And, it's the same reason we watch movies, I think, and watch television is to escape, for a couple hours, for an hour, for a half hour. I can be a detective. I can be a superhero. I can be a woman scorned, like whatever it is, you can get inside of that place for a minute. And when you're writing, it's the same thing. You can get inside these psychologies and just really understand how beautifully layered the human mind is and the human soul can be. And it has made me, I think, have a lot more compassion and grace for people, knowing that we're all just really doing the best that we can.
Right.
And that project specifically, it's interesting because especially when it was happening, when I was telling people about it, and when I tell people I did this project, most people react and say, wow, that sounds really heavy and really sad, looking at this really ugly history of racial terrorism that we still obviously see the effects of today. And it's funny because while, subject matter was very heavy and very sad, all of the people that we talked to, a lot of whom I'm still in touch with, there was almost a joy because they were finally able to tell their stories, and when we talked to them and sitting, and I learned this at StoryCorps, so many people don't have the opportunity to tell their story to someone who will listen to them. The power of just sitting and listening intently, without interjecting, without, drawing on my experience, without, the things that happen when you talk to a friend, but really just completely focused on someone and them telling their own story of their family, of themselves. It's really, really powerful. And a lot of people were overjoyed and overcome with emotion to be able to do that before they passed, or before a family member passed. And so just being a part of that and being able to uplift people, again, I mean, it's such an honor, and it's something that I don't take lightly at all.
Yeah. Was there a particular family that you felt like you connected with the most on that journey?
Yeah, there's a family, the Deadman family, actually. Shira Deadman is a filmmaker herself and a wonderful person. Her and her aunt, that's the family that we did the documentary with. So we originally interviewed them, did an audio interview and took photographs of them. And then we ended up creating this documentary, myself and my co-director, Nick Carbonaro. And so we spent like a lot of time with them, more often than not, in a minivan or in a hotel room. And again, I mean, they were so forthright with their story and their emotions. It was a very emotional experience. The family had been, the grandfather and great-grandfather, respectively, had been lynched, and then his wife left with pretty much the shirt on her back and fled to Los Angeles. And that's where, they resettled the family. And had, gosh, how many kids did she have? Like 10 kids. Like it was the epitome of they tried to bury us. They didn't know we were seeds, you know?
Yes,
Like they had 10 kids and like they all had kids and like, you know, they have this huge, beautiful family here in Los Angeles, but none of them had ever been back to Shreveport and very few of them had ever been back to the South because they were just like too many memories, you know? I don't know. And you can see all this. This film is on, it's lynchinginamerica.eji.org. And I'll repeat it at the end too.
Yes, please. We'll put the link in the description.
Okay.
Right.
And so, you know, we went back with them and went and found the records, did a lot of digging in the library and county public records. And EJI, of course, assisted us and were very helpful. And, you know, found records of the grandfather and went back to the tree where we believe that he was lynched and took soil from it. Wow. And it was extremely emotional, you know, emotional for them. And they were very forthright with their feelings and just letting us be there and letting us film it and letting us, again, like hold those spaces for them and with them was amazing. And I'm still in touch with Shira. I think she just had a baby, actually. She was pregnant. Like, did you have that baby yet? I should call her. Yeah, it was an amazing experience.
And it sounds like just being able to, I think that hybrid of being both a producer and a writer really helps there because you saw the story, you created the story, and you know how their story needs to be told to the audience, to the viewers who may not have that one-on-one connection of you in the van and just feeling that same experience. I can't wait to see it. That sounds incredible.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. How does like just now, obviously the Black Lives Matter movement and, you know, it's definitely a movement, but I feel like it's just, in a way, it's a way of life too, as of now, just, you know, racial injustice and inequality and being able to kind of stand your ground related to that and how us as a society are finally kind of just saying enough is enough. Like, how does that movement and how does being in the era that we're all in today, like give you a different perspective on what you choose to write or what you choose to take on as a writer or what you're doubling down in based on your own history of what you've written about in the past?
I don't know if it has changed the way I create. I mean, I've been Black my whole Black life, you know, my whole Black life. So. I mean, I've always written for Black people, for Black women. And, you know, I think maybe the difference now is that there are people knowing that I think, you know, people are more in a place to hear it in ways that maybe they weren't before, you know. You know, for example, again, with the Lynching in America project, one of our big challenges was how do we present this information? This came about because EJI, the Equal Justice Initiative, had discovered and documented, I want to say 2,000 to 4,000 more lynching cases that had been originally documented. And so they had all this information, they had this, you know, compiled this information and found these families and had like, you know, a really informative but sort of academic document about all of this. And Google gave them a grant and said, we'll bring this to life. And that's where I came in. And a big part of that challenge was how do we make this so people want to engage with it, right? Because it's such a tough history, whether you're white or Black. It's like no one like when I talk about lynching, you're like, not really, you know, like it's not something that's immediately attractive, should we say. And so how do we engage it, you know, present this information in a way that's engaging to people and also in a way that tracks it from then to now. So it's not something that feels so long ago and far away, but so that we're really seeing its effects today in people that, you know, we're in the world with. So I think, you know, and this is before all of this, right? This is in 2016, 2017. But so keeping that in mind, I think is maybe the change, like just who am I speaking to? How am I speaking to them? Yeah, just sort of looking at that balanced, always questioning like who are we talking to and what are we saying, you know? And as the world changes, then those considerations change as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, us three Black women sitting in the room today, right? I'd have to say that, you know, even with your David Makes Man piece that's on OWN, and that will be coming out in season 2 in 2021. How was that process in writing in that writer's room? Or, you know, because we have the creator and then you have the writer. So how did you help make the creator's vision come to life?
Well, you know, first of all, shout out to Terrell Alvin McCraney, creator of the show, and D. Harris Lawrence, who is the showrunner. They are really, really wonderful people and fostered a room that was safe and gave us the freedom to create and to bring Terrell's vision to life. And so these sort of things are really trickled down, I think. Like rooms are kind of only as good as their showrunners, like anything else, you know, like your boss is as good as your boss. And again, I got so lucky in being in this room because they just assembled just an amazing, beautiful team of people who all were truly there to work and truly do the best work possible. You know, if you see the show, the best compliment I've heard, because it's true, is that it's really a love letter to Black people and a love letter to Blackness. And we poured so much love into that, into creating these characters, into creating these storylines. And I think it really leaps off the screen when you watch it. And again, that is due to, I think, Terrell and Dee sort of creating a space where we could do that and we could talk about everything.
I would have to agree. No, I was saying I would agree. I mean, I've seen the show and it's beautiful, like the way the scenery of it, like the way it's shot. And I feel like the story that's being told is so real and so true in the Black community. And we don't really get to see it being told as honestly as it is in David Makes Man.
Yeah. But yeah, honesty and authenticity, I think were clutch. And, you know, Terrell came in with the pilot, and which was already written, and sort of an idea of where he wanted the show to go, like start here, we end here, and we have a couple of these road signs. And then, you know, we get there together. It's like a road trip. You sort of, one person is, you know, got the playlist, one person brings the fire snacks. You know, sometimes you take turns driving, like, you know, we're a team and we all sort of played our positions and helping to keep the metaphor of the quarterback, I guess. But yeah, just it's really just telling the truth and saying, well, what would happen next? You know, we have this foundation. What happens next? And then imagining what it is. You know, if we have these characters, if we have these people, we have this neighborhood, where do we go from here? And really all just collectively putting our minds together to figure out what that was.
Yeah. So in order for some folks who may be listening, watching, you know, can only dream of being in a writer's room one day, like what are some of the things that every writer should have in your opinion, and something that could help them when they get to that moment when they're in a writer's room writing for a hit show, that can just help the show itself flourish?
Every writer should have a script. Every writer should have. It sounds really basic, but I've had people ask me, you know, how do I be a writer? And I was like, well, do you have a script? And they're like, no, but I'm going to. And I'm like, we can't really have a real conversation until you've written a script. Right. Which is hard. And kudos to everyone who does and who finishes it, because it's hard to write a script, and it's hard to write a script that you like. When I was first starting out, someone told me that it would take about 5 scripts before I got to one that was actually good enough to let anyone else read. 5 finished scripts. And I remember at the time being like, just horrified at that number. But he was right. He was right. He was absolutely right. I mean, that said, I also go back. I found like half-written scripts, you know, from school, and that I remember quitting writing in frustration, and I go back and look at it, I'm like, oh, this was actually kind of good. Like, this was a good idea. Why did I stop? You know? So a finished script that you are proud of. I also tell people, as far as you know, how to get to where you want to go, to look around, not up.
Yeah.
The people that you're surrounded by and that you choose to surround yourself by are more than likely the people who will help you, who will support you, and who you will continue working with.
Yeah.
Almost everyone that I collaborate with now, I've known well before, you know, we found our footing in this game. And it was just a matter of us all hiring each other, helping each other, like PAing each other's student films, you know, years and years and years ago. And then, you know, we just kept working together. And as the tide rose, all the boats did too. I think a lot of people are really concentrating on like, how do I, you know, get to this person up there, get to that person up there, and like, who can put me on? And I think it's much more important just like to make cool stuff with your friends. If you can't, you know, not everyone can go to school or wants to go to school, nor should you. But, you know, volunteering at film festivals, starting a writers group, or you meet every week or every 2 weeks and you're accountable for turning in pages to each other. You know, whatever way that you can create community, and no matter where you live, there is some sort of film community, like I promise, you know, and just encourage each other and work with each other and support each other.
Yes, I love that. Ebony, we're on the right track then. Check.
We're on the right track. We're on the right track. But the thing is, like, it's such a process. Like, I feel like sometimes when you're a creator, like, people are like, oh my gosh, like, your project was amazing. Or like, oh my gosh, their script is great, right? And it's like, no one gets to see those blood, sweat, and tears that you were doing like 3 years ago before it became like a masterpiece, you know? And so it is such a process, and to really like stay in it, you know, I think to get to the place that Allison's at right now, this is like a long game. It's not a short one. You know, you have to like stay in it.
Yes.
You have to be ready, prepared for, you know, the bumps in the road, and continue on the journey. I know that's like so cliche to say, but it's so true, because it's such a hard road to get to where you want to be in life. Sometimes it just is what it is. We're all on it right now. And so I identify with that so much.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it. Well, Allison, we're gonna, I mean, first of all, thank you so much for being so candid, so open with your journey, with all our questions. We want to take it to a fun twist, even though this whole thing was amazing, and talk about our game. So the game is titled, Are You in the Room? And it's kind of a take on the writer's room. So what we're going to do is ask you or read to you a few log lines of different shows, potentially movies, and you can respond with if you're going to be in the room or in the hallway. In the room meaning, oh yes, I'm totally in for this script. I want to write on it. This would be the type of show that I write. In the hallway might be a good show, just not for me. This is not on my wheelhouse. Okay. So I want to preface this with saying, like, even though this is just a game, folks, so, you know, your answers are your answers, but that doesn't mean that, you know, if the time and the opportunity arises, you might be fit to kind of work on that show anyway. So,
so right, we don't want to quote you too hard, okay? And like,
right, we're not gonna quote you too hard. We're like, all the bags go your way, no problem. Right. But this is just for the sake of the game. So the first one, the log line reads, a group of ambitious law students and their brilliant criminal defense professor become involved in a twisted murder plot that promises to change the course of their lives. Are you in the room or are you in the hallway?
For How to Get Away with Murder?
Bill, this is a trick. Listen, you are in your craft. This is
right.
I wasn't going to read you the title, but yes, it's definitely For How to Get Away with Murder.
Really funny. You know, what's funny is I actually don't really watch that much TV, especially for someone who writes a lot of TV, or writes for TV. I don't really watch that much TV, so it's funny that I got that. I would take that job. I would. Yeah.
You're in the room for that one.
Awesome.
I would be in the
room.
She's
in the room. She's in the room.
We love to see it.
Even without Viola.
Yeah. Okay, so the next one, it says, a family man struggles to gain a sense of cultural identity, how on raising his kids in a predominantly white upper middle class neighborhood. Are you in the room or are you in the hallway?
I remember when Blackish came out.
Oh my God.
She's so good. She's so good.
And I was like, and this was before, I don't even know if I was living in LA at this point, but I was like, oh, I should be on that show, because I grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood and went to a predominantly white school. And that's like, I remember like reading that log line and being like, oh, I want to be in that room so bad.
Yes.
Because I had that experience.
Right? Like, I feel like so many people identify with that. Like, I identify with it, and I love that show. It's so funny.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
So
Did you
she's
go to
in the
New York?
room.
She's in the room. She is in the room. Okay, so the next log line. A woman flees Mexico after her drug runner boyfriend is murdered. Settling in Texas, she looks to become the country's reigning drug smuggler and to avenge her lover's murder. Are you in the room or in the hallway?
I would totally be in that room. I don't know what that is. That sounds fun. Avenge your lover's murder is like all you really have to say.
Right?
That's it. And that one was Queen of the South. It's amazing. So totally check it out.
Yeah, that one's good. I've watched a couple of episodes. I'm still on my Netflix and chill list of things I need to get through. Okay.
Okay.
The next one is the lives of people trying to make it in the rap game in the bright lights of NYC, but will business mix with pleasure? Are you in the room or are you in the hallway?
Is that Power?
It could have been, but no, it's not.
I would be in the hallway for that.
That one was Love and Hip Hop New York. Yeah, sorry, Ebony.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. Look, good. We're getting her. We finally. I know we started off high with the popular shows here.
No, I would be only because I'm going off logline alone. Not even like no shade to Love and Hip Hop, but only because I find fictional entertainment really hard to write about. One, because like real entertainment is so compelling and it's just so hard to nail like these characters and these storylines, and more often than not it's sort of like a cheap knockoff from the headlines sort of version of it. And it's just like, I like to write things that are fun. Like that just doesn't sound fun to me, you know? It's like
I get it.
Like,
plus it's like
something else.
How creative can you really be if like it's supposed to be like their real lives?
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, we were talking offline. Like, how do writers work in reality TV? And perhaps it's more of a producer role, but it is what it is. Okay, so the next log line. A couple's first date takes an unexpected turn when a police officer pulls them over. Are you in the room or in the hallway?
You know, I haven't seen that movie. I haven't. I would probably be in the hallway because that shit is so real. You know, like sometimes it's fun to write about things that aren't real.
I get that.
Yeah.
You know.
Enough said. Yeah, that's
Which
true.
one was that, Akila?
Oh, that was Queen and Slim. I was just like thinking back to the movie, like, oh my God, yep, it was very real.
No, I knew what you were doing.
Queen and Slim.
Queen and Slim. It was a good one. Okay, so set in the 1980s, this show looks at the juxtaposition of several segments of life and society in New York and the ball culture world. Are you in the room or in the hallway?
The ball culture world, that would be so fun to write for, but I would absolutely be in the hallway to give my seat up to the people who are actually of and in that world. It's as much as I love ball culture and am acquainted with it, it's not my place to tell that story.
Yeah.
I would be in the hallway, but with my ear pressed to the door.
Right.
Yes, for our listeners, that's a good takeaway was posed.
Folks too.
Of course.
Yeah, show was posed, and that's a great takeaway for writers too. Like, write what you feel comfortable with, or creators in general. Just in a way, in some ways, it's not bad to be in your lane and excel.
It's not, and so much like when we're choosing projects and choosing what to write on. A lot goes into these decisions, and a lot should go into that decision. And just because you can doesn't mean you should. And there's so many wonderful trans writers from the community, the LGBTQ community, who deserve to tell their own story. I don't believe in telling other people's stories for them, you know, unless I'm specifically asked to by someone who, you know, wants me to co-write something or of that nature. But yeah, it's important to look at projects and the story you're telling and why you're telling it, and also know that it could potentially be years and years of your life, you know.
Right. And just to even add on to that, I feel like, you know, there are qualified people to tell their story. So I feel like a lot of the times people get hired because they're like, oh, well, no one else was available to, you know, write this story or tell or be this character's voice or whatever. But like, there are plenty of people who are qualified, of people of color, people of, you know, mixed sexuality that can absolutely tell their own stories and that are very qualified to do so. So I just wanted to add that little tidbit.
Yes,
for sure.
Absolutely. Okay, and the last log line we have for you is: a young prodigy living in Florida looks for a way out of his poor neighborhood. Are you in the room or are you in the hallway?
I will work on David Makes Man as many seasons as forever and ever and ever. I've signed a blood oath with Terrell and Dee and said, anytime you need me, I will come from wherever I am and whatever I'm doing to work on that show.
Yes, of course she is in the room. She's in the room and she's making moves. Yes,
right.
Allison.
Right. She is physically in that room.
So that's physically in the room. In real life. So thanks so much for playing our game. And before we let you go, we just want to hear more about you and your upcoming projects. We talked about things that are happening and things that you're doing. Is there anything you want to share with our viewers, with our listeners about things that are upcoming, whether as a writer or just in your everyday life?
I'm like, I can't.
Oh, so we're gonna have to have you back. Is that what you're saying?
You're gonna have to have me back when the ink is dry and I can and when the announcements have been made. Yeah, after the announcement comes out, then I'll come back and we can talk all about it. But until then, David Makes Man season 2, as Ebony said, in 2021. You know, inshallah, and quarantine willing. You know, look for that. And David Makes, the first season is now on HBO Max, streaming for people who might not have cable, which is also really exciting because we were just reaching wider audiences.
Yeah.
And I think that's it. The Underground Railroad should hopefully be out in 2021 also as well. You know, so many things are just pending and depending on different things, but yeah.
Yeah, well, we already know that Allison has her hand in a lot of different other projects, so we're not concerned. And
all the pots, honey.
Right. We're going to see her name everywhere, so I'm excited to have you back so we can talk about all those other upcoming projects that are a little on hush-hush right now.
Exactly.
But yes. Well, we just want to say thank you so much for listening to the Black Creators Club, and you can find us on all social media platforms at the Black Creators Club on Instagram and on Twitter and on YouTube. Thank you so much, Allison, for joining us today and hanging out with us and talking with us. Please let us know where we can find you on social media or how they can connect with you, where we can find your projects.
On Instagram, my handle is The Mighty Upsetter. And my projects and news is www.itsAllisondavis.com.
Perfect. And yes, awesome. I browsed that website and it's great. It has literally all the links. Anything you need to know about her, it's right there.
Yes.
So, right. No questions asked. It's perfect. Well, you can also find us on social media if you guys wanted to. Akila Friend, where can we find you?
You can just find me for my name at Akila Friend, and it's friend with 2 F's. You can find that on Instagram. I'm mainly on Instagram, but you know, I have a little Twitter for the people as well. But just Instagram is my main source.
Yes, and then I'm Ebony Chapman, and you can find me on Instagram and on Twitter at Ebony Chapman 12. Well, until then, thank you guys so much for joining the Black Creators Club. See you next week.
Thank you.